safe online habits.
The First Lady's Be Best campaign also focuses on the growing opioid crisis in the country and combating its abuse, as well as the overall well-being of kids. The story of baby orca and her mother sends with it a lesson for humanity. AFN's Charlie Butts explains.
The mother orca had the calf near Victoria, British Columbia, but it died soon after, and she carried the dead calf on her back for 17 days and an estimated 1,000 miles plus before giving up on her baby killer whale. The news traveled worldwide, and there was a good deal of sympathy and compassion, according to Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
And society usually expresses compassion and support for parents who grieve the death of a born child. But this reminds us, that orca who lovingly mourned for her calf, it reminds us that we must also be there to help those who grieve after losing a child through miscarriage or abortion.
Mattis says it's not a matter of comparing a human being to a whale or other animal, but there are parallel lessons we can learn.
A woman who experienced abortion once told me, if you're pregnant and give birth, you carry that child for 9 months. If you're pregnant and have an abortion, you carry that child for a lifetime.
There is help available for the grieving mother and father, and information on resources is on the Life Issues Institute website. I'm Charlie Butts.
They're only temporary, but dozens of elderly South Koreans are holding reunions with relatives from North Korea, their first since their families were driven apart during the 1950 to 1953 Korean War. During the reunions today, many of the elderly Koreans held each other's hands and wiped away tears while asking about each other's lives. Some showed photos of relatives who had already died. The event was arranged as the rival Koreas boost reconciliation efforts amid a push to resolve North Korea's nuclear standoff. In final news this hour, members of the University of Maryland's football team have announced their plans to honor a fallen teammate this season. Matt Napolitano has details.
Johnny Jordan, who roomed with McNair, announced one of several efforts.
No member of the University of Maryland football team will wear the number 79 through his graduation year.
In addition, number 79 decals will be worn on Maryland players' helmets this season with moments of silence before games against Texas and Temple. The offensive line room in an under-construction field house will be named in McNair's honor and a scholarship established in his name. Jordan McNair passed away in June from complications of a heat stroke suffered in practice. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
That is American Family News for this hour. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices.
My name's Antonio. My drinking had gotten to the point where I was embarrassed to go to the liquor store. But when I came to Teen Challenge, I finally broke the stronghold alcohol had on my life. Now I'm truly free.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
What is broken about Twitter? I mean, I think it really depends on who you follow. There's a lot of emphasis today on politics Twitter. And politics Twitter tends to be pretty divisive, and it tends to be pretty contentious, and you see a lot of unhealthy debate that you probably want to walk away from.
Don't need to hear him saying the N-word to know he's racist. This is the man who's attacking the NFL constantly. This is a man who stands on black people's necks so that he can appear taller to white people. White nationalism and white entitlement were at the basis of his campaign. We don't need any more evidence. The jury is in.
Primarily, our youth programs aren't designed to facilitate deep, meaningful, lasting young adult relationships. So these young people sort of know about the Bible, they esteem the Bible, but they don't necessarily believe that the Bible has claim on their lives.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back. Yeah, you have been messaging me, and God bless you. Thank you so much for the notes and everybody reaching out and going, where are you? We had an amazing couple of days over this past weekend. And so I'll tell you all about where I've been and what we've been up to and what today's show is going to be about. In fact, let's start with that. Welcome in to Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And guess what? Yeah, we're back. So Twitter's on the left, breaking news. We're going to talk about that today. We're also going to have Mattie Duppler of Independent Women's Forum. She's going to come on today and talk about the midterm prospects for the GOP. And then hour two, we're going to continue. We're going to crack into this topic from the Marriage and Family Conference, the Urban Family Talk Marriage and Family Conference. If you are listening to the show right now and you missed that we were doing that, oh my goodness, what an amazing time we had. And we had such a great group of people to show up, well over 200 registrations. So lots of people were there. I was only able to, because of family commitments, be there on Friday. But my Friday was the most energizing Friday at a conference I have had, I'd say probably since CPAC 2012. Now, I've never been to Value Voters Summit. So maybe I've missed out on opportunities to be this energized, and we'll rectify that. But I have to say, it was an amazing event. So we're going to get into that as well. You are probably thinking, okay, Stacy, Urban Family Talk, Marriage and Family Conference. Well, Urban Family Talk was started by Will Addison. He's the general manager of Urban Family Talk, and he is in charge of the programming there and all of that. And he's responsible for bringing me to the network. So he's my boss, and I'm very happy to be a part of this. So he'd had for years as a part of his vision for Urban Family Talk to have this Marriage and Family Conference. And so he and his wife, Miki, who hosts the morning show on on Urban Family Talk, they actually started, bringing this idea into the, actual, this is something that's going to happen mode. And all of the hosts were very excited about it, including myself. And so the planning began. And so it was decided that it would be August 17th and 18th, and that we would meet in Tupelo at Hope Church, and that we'd have breakout sessions and speakers, and that's what happened. So Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, who I've met before, but I'd never been at a conference where, I was actually kind of on the program a little bit. He was one of the keynotes. And so we had Abraham Hamilton III, Mickey Addison was a keynote. And Dr. Schuler was a keynote. So there was an amazing group of people who came together. Well, what was most impressive to me about it for that Friday, because I arrived in Tupelo on Thursday evening and then was there all day Friday and flew out on Saturday. And what I found amazing was the distance that people traveled to attend the conference. They wanted to hear what we had to say about marriage and family, and it was an amazing presentation. So there were a number of breakout sessions, and I had a breakout session with Mickey Addison where we talked about preparing your child for either public school or homeschool and what that looks like intersecting with, the Christian worldview, which is the reason why a lot of Christians have pulled their kids out of public school, because you can no longer have the Christian worldview and not be basically competing with your child's teacher as to what your child believes on a day-to-day basis. But we talked about all of that. And part of that conversation was Miki presenting in her keynote on Friday morning that so many, just huge percentage of kids who are millennials are unchurched because they left the church when they were 12 or 13 years old when they couldn't reconcile something they learned in science class with what the Bible says. And, another huge segment of that group, they just don't have any idea of how the Bible and the Bible stories and going to church and faith really intersect with their calling to be a graphic designer or, whatever it is that they feel called to do in the world through their work. And so as technology takes over, they see less and less relevancy for Christ, the Bible, and the church. So they're still going to church with their parents, but they're checked out. They're not there. And the minute they have the opportunity to no longer be forced to go to church, then they stop going. And so during the Marriage and Family Conference, I felt, first off, it was a lot of different feelings. Like I got to spend a couple of minutes talking to Tim Wildman and his son. Look, these are great people. Wesley Wildman, we were just chatting. We were in the sanctuary, and I walked over just to say hi. And I'm just so glad to be a part of the group. Like just, you know how you say, some people are like, I'm just glad to be here. That's how I was. So it was great to speak with them and catch up with them. But there was a moment during the conference where we were doing the panel on engagement. And it was a panel with Dr. Clarence Schuler, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Dexter Sanders, and Ryan Bomberger of the Radiance Foundation, and myself. And I was the only girl on the panel, so Miki and I kind of played off of that a little bit, but it was really, it wasn't about gender. It was about us being there and each having something to say about engagement. And I just kind of, as I was listening to them speak, the mental acuity and brilliance on that panel, the amount of knowledge that was there, and all of them underneath, so the knowledge is underneath the fact that they just love God and want to serve him and want to do amazing things for the kingdom, and that they're truth tellers, whip smart truth tellers. It was amazing. It was just, it's hard to really articulate, but I was truly encouraged, and kind of, you get your engine revved up when you get information and you're like, you know what, I got to do something about that. What should I do? That's where I was the whole time I was at the conference. And so my encouragement to you is, if you didn't make it this year, and it was just like the body of Christ, just in case you're wondering who all showed up, everybody of every different background from all over the country. There was even a couple there from West Africa. And I gave away some books and resources, not that I wrote, but things that are important to me in my faith walk that I use on a regular basis. I gave a couple of those away. And we'll be doing more of that here on the show. But the point to all of it was that people drove and flew and stayed in hotels and brought their kids and their husbands with them. Some of the women, I mean, it was families, it was individuals, it was couples, blacks, whites, you name it. It was everybody who was interested in learning more about marriage and family and that biblical worldview came to the conference. And let me tell you, Will Addison, Miki Addison, everybody on the program brought it like it was their last speaking engagement. It was amazing. And so I just encourage you for next year, if you get wind that we're having this conference again, I encourage you to book your hotel. Even if you're not sure, just put a pin in it by booking the hotel so you'll have somewhere to stay in Tupelo and get down there. Tupelo is a great little town. Lots to do there. For it to be a smaller town, it has a big draw for a lot of people in the surrounding area to come into Tupelo during the week. And they had the Furniture Mart, and the Bodybuilding Association or competition was there. And so there was a lot of competition for how to get a hotel room for that weekend. And so that's why I encourage you to book ahead, because you never know who else is going to be in town that weekend. But don't miss it. Next year is your opportunity to see it again. And it'll be a whole just different flavor, because there'll be different keynote speakers, and you're going to want to be there and take advantage of the content. So some of what we discussed was this. It's a phenomenon where, I would have never thought, like one of the things that we discussed on numerous occasions during the conference, it came up that such a large percentage, it's like 14% of Generation Z. So children aged 4 to 18 are Generation Z, for now, because the anthropologists usually tweak those numbers a little bit. But if you're 19 this year to, I think, age 38, you're a millennial. But if you're 4 to 18, you're Generation Z. And those kids are actually the ones who are the highest percentage of kids who actually admit openly claiming atheism in the history of this country, the largest unchurched generation in the history of this country. And they're not popping out of nowhere. These kids actually come from Christian homes, a lot of them. But they claim atheism. And my joke with Miki Addison, we just played off of it a couple times during the day, was if my mom even heard the word atheism, I don't care where she was. She could even magically do it from work. Her head would pop around the corner and be like, we don't have any atheists here. Atheism. Like, we all know that. I mean, only a fool says there is no God. She would go straight to the word, and she could just quote all day long. And I was raised in church, my sister and I, and it just never occurred to us to espouse a belief that denied the existence of the Creator. Yet this is where children are. And it can't be a surprise when we see the command and control structure that Planned Parenthood has with the eugenics agenda, and they've partnered together to control our K through 12 public education systems, which is why it's so important that you either get involved or get your kids out. But you can't leave your kids in public school and not be involved and expect everything to turn out okay. You just can't do it. You have to be a rock solid Christian household, not a cultural Christian, but a rock solid Christian household in order to make the kind of discipleship happen where your child will not be drug away from the faith gradually by attending public school. So I want to listen to this trailer. It's a movie called You Lost Me, and it's about millennials who've left the faith. And this is about millennials, but the most recent Barna Group information is at barna.com. And you can find their most recent study, which is an update of the one before, where they talk about this current Generation Z group of kids and how they're walking away from Christianity. And you might think to yourself, well, they'll make their way back. Well, I mean, our only job as parents is to raise up children who love God and want to glorify him forever, who are disciples. That's our job as parents. We may also add in that they get a good education and they go on to college, and we're supposed to be raising them to grow up in the fear and admonition of the Lord. If we're not doing that, what are we doing? So first off, we'll listen to the You Lost Me trailer, the first bit. And then after we come back from the first break in this hour, we're going to be speaking with Mattie Duppler, founder and president of Forward Strategies, about election stuff. And then what we'll do is we're going to kind of wind our way around. We're going to listen to some audio of CEO Jack Dorsey of Twitter, talk about the left-leaning stuff, talk about the kneeling protests, take some calls at the end of hour one. We'll take your calls and let you weigh in on pretty much whatever we've discussed so far this hour. And then we'll circle back around to this subject of the millennials leaving. And there's some fascinating information, but that'll be in hour two. So right now, let's listen to number 3.
Churches have fallen into this consumer corporate model of putting on a show. Part of me doesn't want to go to church to be entertained. I want it to cost me something. I actually want it to cost me something. And I think we've fallen into this trap of sitting there and being entertained and receiving. You get your fix and then you go, and somehow that's insufficient to me.
You present that the only reason someone could leave the church is because they were upset or discouraged, or someone was mean to them, or whatever it is, then you've completely talked past the person who left for intellectual reasons. Yeah, people like me, you're going to continue to lose us if there's no answers there.
And so this is a millennial talking about some of the struggles that he had with growing up in a Christian home, but not being able to reconcile questions that he had. And there are a ton of resources. Like Hugh Ross is an actual astrophysicist and rocket scientist who can answer. He has written all these books about answers to faith questions. So questions you have about Noah and the ark. Children ask lots of questions about that because it is absolutely implausible that everybody on the face of the earth was killed by a flood that covered the whole face of the earth. Yet just a few people survived, and they took 2 of every species. Every species. How did that happen? Hugh Ross can tell you the answer to that. So you don't have to say to your kids, just have faith, because that's why they're leaving, because they don't want to just have faith. They want to know the answer. The Bible provides for that, but we have to be able to do the research and actually tell our kids what the truth is, or point them in the direction of the truth so that they can know that the Bible is true. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Mattie Duppler. Hey, at Stacey on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. Be right back.
Hi, I'm Crawford Ritz with a Legacy Moment. Randy Alcorn, in his powerful little book, The Treasure Principle, rightly states that giving is a barometer of our spiritual maturity. In fact, some years ago, a friend of mine who is executive pastor of a large church told me that there was a noticeable correlation between what God has done in the lives of the church members and what they put in the offering plate. Part of our problem in the Christian life, I think, is that we segment our lives. We say, this is what I give, this is what I do at home, and this is what I do at church, and this is what I do in the community. But true spirituality demonstrates that all we have and all we are belong to God. There's no segmentation with God. I was reminded of this as I read 2 Chronicles chapter 31, verse 10. And Azariah said to him, since the contributions began to be brought into the house of the Lord, we have had enough to eat with plenty left over. For the Lord has blessed his people, and this great quantity is left over. He says, these people are giving primarily because God has touched their hearts. We've got too much. Isn't that a great problem to have? Their generosity was a work of the Spirit of God in their midst. Let me ask you a question. How grateful are you for what God has done and is doing in your life? Does your checkbook indicate your gratitude? Here's what I want you to remember and do today. Randy Alcorn's book, The Treasure Principle, has had a profound impact on me. We all need to embrace the message that he underscores of generosity, of sacrifice, and not segmenting our lives. Take a look at your stewardship. It's not part of your life. It is all of your life.
Thanks, Crawford, and thank you for listening to today's Legacy Moment, a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've been all over the country helping disaster victims who lose everything.
It's truly a blessing. I really don't have the words to express.
And yet they see a glimmer of hope when a volunteer shows up.
Building the home, that's the second reason we're here. The number one reason is to share the gospel and give them hope.
It's everything that's right in America. I mean, it really represents the best that we have to offer.
That's one of the main reasons for doing it, is being able to be the hands and feet of Jesus and coming out and working with so many wonderful volunteers.
I just feel like it's important in this day and age to teach a child how to serve.
Please go to our website, 8daysofhope.com, and click on Get Involved, submit your email address, and the next time we go anywhere with a disaster, we'll invite you to come along as well.
I love coming in the job room because you can see these pieces of paper. They aren't just a piece of paper. Right. It's a family that's hurting, and it's a gospel opportunity.
You know, I just thank God, for this moment. I mean, I'll be back in my home, and I know it's going to be awesome.
Come love others with 8 Days of Hope.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. Go to urbanfamilytalk.com and afr.net. You can find the podcast there, and you can also, read the articles from many hosts who are on both networks, and just fantastic content from everybody. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Mattie Duppler, founder and president of Forward Strategies, senior fellow at the National Taxpayers Union, visiting fellow Independent Women's Forum. Mattie, thanks for joining the show today. Uh-oh. Looks like we lost her, but we will get her back. In the meantime, I want to give you just a little bit more. So this is one of those things where, have you ever gone and sat with a group of people that you don't get to see often, maybe coworkers or something like that? This is what continually struck me over the weekend. I was continually struck by the fact that these are the people that I work with. Have you ever had that moment where everyone is doing their best work and you're sitting there like, is this my actual crew? This is awesome. That's how I was all day Friday, from the people who were volunteering and working out front with the kind of gift bags and things like that, to everyone who was doing the kind of tertiary volunteer type stuff, to the people who I actually got to spend time with. Lonnie Poindexter was there. I could keep naming, but it was impactful. It was like sitting there and receiving something that I maybe didn't know that I needed, but I did need it. And so it was exactly as it should have been, except for the fact that I had to leave on Saturday and I wasn't able to hear down to the end of the actual event, which I'm hoping to get. There's going to be CDs of the event that we can get, and that's where I'm going to get to partake of that second day that I missed because I had to come home. You guys know update on the situation with our college student. She's in college. It happened. We dropped her off. I did not melt or blow away like so much dust in one of the sci-fi movies. And I live to tell about it. And she's even been back home to pick up some stuff that she was like, I forgot this, I forgot that. She drove home over the weekend and picked up a few things and is back there. And this is the first week. She was there for freshman week. So this is week 1. And it looks like it's going well. Thanks to the technology. I remember going to college and I did not speak to my parents. Well, of course, we spoke by phone, but it was only once every 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes once a week, but more often because they were overseas in Germany, so it was really expensive. And there was no texting. I used to go to the mailbox and I'd have letters from my parents, and I would read them. One from my sister, one from my mom, one from my dad. And they didn't always write me every week. So some weeks it would just be my dad, other weeks. I mean, that was it. There was no texting. There was no instant communication. So I have to count my blessings. I'm blessed to have the ability to just text her and have her text me right back. It's really wonderful. So I'm going to have to tell my producer again today that I don't have I'm going to try with my call screener software, but I am not sure if we have our guest back. Live radio. Uh-oh. And I don't know how to turn off that sound on my call screening computer. Okay, so we do not have Mattie Duppler of Forward Strategies yet. Oh, okay, awesome. We do. Perfect. So it's my pleasure to welcome Mattie Duppler, founder and president of Forward Strategies. Mattie, thank you for joining the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Unemployment numbers, and what exactly do those numbers, which have been trending in the right direction and due in no small part or due entirely to the president's policies that have spurred on the economy, what does it mean for the midterms?
Exactly. Well, every week now we're seeing positive economic data emerging as a result of not just the president's tax cut, which is fundamentally rewriting the way businesses invest here in the United States, but also the rest of the Trump economic agenda when it comes to domestic policy. Deregulation has been a huge boon for business. All of a sudden, we're seeing all of these small businesses across the country able to invest in their workers the way they've wanted to all along, but haven't been able to because of an onerous regulatory regime. So we're seeing, as a result, tight labor markets, which means people have jobs if they want jobs. They can switch jobs if they want to. There are now more open vacant jobs than there are workers in the country, which is an incredible feat given where we were just a couple years ago when we were hearing about millions of workers out of work. But more than that, we're seeing even more robust metrics of economic success in the form of American savings rates going up. Just this first quarter of this year, we have seen the Bureau of Economic Analysis double what they expect to be the savings rates for Americans, which is a huge difference from just the past 10 years. Going into the recession in 2008, there was this sense in America that the equity in people's homes was enough to have in terms of a savings nest egg, and people weren't actually investing in their futures in the way that they're doing so now. We saw it last week, record number of 401k millionaires because people have started saving their money again. So these flagging inequalities in the economy, because of the changes made in the regulatory regime and with tax reform, we're starting to see the scales rebalance themselves in a way that opens up the path to prosperity for a lot more Americans.
Okay, so Mattie, we're gonna have to go over a couple of those things because you just shared a lot. First of all, 401k millionaires. Let's talk about that a little bit because I guarantee you we're never going to see that on CNN or MSNBC. They're too busy talking about how the president, not only is he a racist and a traitorous, treasonous individual, but he's also going to start a race war. That's the most recent garbage they're spewing over there. Meanwhile, they could be telling Americans, did you know it's possible for you to be a 401k millionaire? Most Americans don't even know that's a possibility. Let's talk about it.
Exactly right. Yeah, and I tire of this consistent pessimism from the mainstream media, where everywhere you look, there are reasons to be optimistic, and that savings rate really is one. The great thing about savings is that they compound. So that means that if you begin saving today, you are already richer tomorrow than you would have been otherwise. And that's the case with 401k millionaires, people who have decided to start saving, even at their first job, that first job where an employer offers them some kind of retirement package. We see people who are taking employers up on that. Not only are they doing that, they're getting the full match from their employer. And that's a way to really start to build a nest egg that you can rely on in the future. I'm a millennial. We get a bad rap, millennials, for our spending habits. And, millennials are consistently a little bit anxious about entering into the stock market and don't have the saving rates of older generations. But right now, what we're seeing is not only optimism in terms of economic underlying numbers, but the stock market really doing so well, I think, will increase the confidence for young people like myself to start taking up their employers on those kinds of options for savings vehicles. And then looking forward into September, the House of Representatives has said, House Republicans have said that when they come back in September, they want to do tax reform 2.0. And a big component of that is increasing savings and savings opportunities for employers and workers.
Oh, my goodness. So that just makes me so excited. I mean, anything that kind of spurs employees to kind of break out of, I got this list of things to do today and I have my boss, is IMing me about, X, Y, and Z. Anything to get employees to stop for 5 seconds and say, wait a minute. Do you mean that as a millennial, if I start saving just this percentage or this amount, or if I just meet the match, so save enough to get the entire employer match, at some point I could be a 401k millionaire, and this I don't have to stop drinking custom coffees or, turn off my Hulu account. This is the real talk, right, Mattie? So I'm not a millennial, but I have read many conflicting stories about millennials, how you guys are much more prone to saving and investing than you are to big spending, how you're much more likely to live in fewer square feet and buy cheaper furniture. So you're kind of the IKEA generation, where you don't need a $2,000 Henry buffet in your dining room, if you even have a dining room, because you don't see any reason for the extra square footage. There are some things about millennials that aren't touted as often that are really, you're kind of a more practical people, if you will, which I find fascinating because, again, it's the people who raised you that kind of bring you kind of emerge as this people group. And then we have to kind of wait and see, well, what are we going to get? Like, what do we bake up? What is this generation going to be like? But this is an opportunity for all of us as Americans, regardless of politics, to just say, look, take advantage of this economy and whatever your employer is offering. And many of them are offering great things.
Right, exactly. And this all goes back to when the economy is doing well, employers have to increase their compensation and their benefits package in order to keep employees happy. Because right now, if an employee doesn't have the benefits package that they like, they can go to another employer. They've got that mobility to do so. So increasing those types of matches for a 401k or other types of retirement benefits is one way that employers can keep employees in this tight labor market. Young people really came of financial age during the recession, so they're a little leery of investing long-term in the stock market. But I do think when you have an employer who offers some kind of retirement benefit, it's a nice little gateway into that experience, because all you need to do is check with your HR department and mark down that you would like to have part of your compensation going to a retirement package, and then you can kind of leave it and forget it. And it grows over time without you having to even miss that income coming in the door, because it goes straight to your retirement account to begin with.
Yeah, and one of the tips that I think my husband and I have heard it so often that it's like a mantra, which is when you get a raise, automatically take some of the raise and put it towards your 401k.
Absolutely.
So you do that before the money hits and you get used to it. And so you can actually really exponentially get to that if you're wanting to get to 5% or 10%, or first meet the employer match number and then get beyond that.
Absolutely.
So, and you can really get to a place where you're at like 20% of your income. It's not unheard of. It's not that you're not living. It's that when you get a raise, it doesn't automatically go towards bigger house, newer car, cowgirl boots. It doesn't go to that right away unless you've met your 401k goals. And I'm just noticing over at marketwatch.com, one of their most popular stories right now, while we're having this conversation, is that the Dow is on the verge of busting out of correction phase for the first time in 6 months. This is a great economy to be alive in.
It's a great economy to be alive. It's a great economy to be cutting your teeth in, even if you're an anxious or new investor. It's a great opportunity to really be able to look with a clear view at what the market opportunity is for you, because you don't have to be a billionaire. You don't have to be buying up, huge portions of a hedge fund in order to participate in this market. A couple dollars can get you started, and especially if you have an employer who's offering you that opportunity, you really should be taking advantage of that as a young person. And we saw that too with businesses and companies at the beginning of the year. Some of them, what they did with the tax reform bonuses, some companies were giving cash bonuses to their employees, but others were expanding the compensation packages and increasing their 401k matches, recognizing that $1 today is compounded in $1 tomorrow, and their employees will be better off in the long run as a result.
Okay, I hope people are listening to this. And if you're just tuning in, we have the privilege of having Mattie Duppler, founder and president of Forward Strategy, senior fellow at the National Taxpayers Union, and visiting fellow at Independent Women's Forum. So some of our favorite organizations, Mattie's intersected with all of those. And then what we're talking about right now is how the unemployment numbers and this fantastic economic outlook that we're enjoying right now, and it's again, a penny saved today, not counting on this same economy being here this time next year. You just take advantage of what we got going on now. Is that the midterm elections are looking kind of rosy for the party that's bringing all this economic prosperity.
Exactly right. It would be a statistical anomaly for Republicans to lose the chambers of Congress that they currently run with unemployment being this low, with the economic environment being as good as it is. Now, that being said, it is Republicans' job to go out and remind Americans why they are feeling more confident right now. All of this optimism that Americans are feeling, whether it be that they have a bigger 401k and that they're finally able to open an investment account that they haven't been able to for ages and ages for lack of opportunity, or just the fact that they've hated their job and now they feel like they can leave and go find a new job. All of those are reasons for optimism, but they need to be reminded that it is a result of Republican pro-growth policies, that is the ecosystem we find ourselves in. And Republicans, sometimes they struggle with message discipline. I really would like to see all members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate back in their districts this August talking about what a difference it makes to just have those changes in the tax code that have really only been around for 9 months now. Remember, the tax bill only passed in December of last year, so we haven't even had a full year to cycle in all of the new changes that will happen as a result of these changes in public policy. But I think the first 2 quarters of this year indicate that there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of reason for Americans to feel optimistic about this economic environment because of those tax changes. And there's ways that we can build on that too. As I mentioned earlier, the House Republicans have talked a lot about doing tax reform 2.0 and building on the components of the tax bill that are so important to average Americans. Making the tax cuts permanent on the individual side is huge. That's one of the main planks of tax reform 2.0. The second part is the savings, making sure savings are available to all workers and all employers who want to offer them to their workers. And then really creating a robust environment for entrepreneurship, because we know that the way our economy is evolving, it needs to be supportive of entrepreneurs and small businesses who need more access to capital than the entrenched interests in the big businesses. Getting rid of that corporate rate, getting it down from 35 to 21% last December was so crucial in terms of re-leveling the playing field for American businesses. But now we need to make sure that there is permanent economic policy in place that allows businesses not only to grow, but to scale and to start. We want the young entrepreneur sitting in the middle of the country to feel that they have just as much opportunity to start their dream business as someone who is living in a big urban center or somewhere close to, their local government. Everyone should feel that they have that opportunity.
And so we just have time for one more quick question, and I just have to ask you, because we've had some fantastic guests on talking about the economy, and one of the things that's been asserted recently by a guest is that we're going to see some calming down of all of this economic optimism after the tax reform has gotten some age on it, maybe a year. Then we're going to see things kind of go back to that 2.1% GDP. And I'm not hearing that from you right now. If I'm analyzing what I've heard from you in just these last few minutes correctly, you actually are seeing the opposite of that.
I think that we are seeing a change in the way the economy has functioned for the past several years. Remember that the new normal for many years was 1.5%, maybe 2% growth, which was absolutely anemic compared to what the average growth rate had been in the United States for the modern era. So when it comes to the actual growth rate, I think we'll continue to see that tick upwards, or at least stay at around 3%. But what I think is really important is what the change in public policy this past year has done to increase the opportunity for more changes in the future. Like I said, getting rid of that barrier on the corporate tax rate is so important because it creates the inertia and the opportunity for people to experience the effect of pro-growth policy, to learn from that, and then implement more changes on top of the benefits they've already received from those initial changes.
Perfect. Mattie Duppler, thank you so much for being with us today. We'll be back with more right after this.
The Capital One commercial will forever be etched in the ear of the listener. What's in your wallet is a phrase that won't easily be forgotten. But this is not a Capital One plug. I want you to think about the people that are in your circle of influence. Who's in your circle is my new catchphrase, simply because we don't think enough about the people or spirits that we allow into our personal space. Negativity is contagious and fatal. Misery loves company, and it's fatal to your hopes and dreams. I think we all know someone who, no matter what good has happened, always has something negative to say. Ugh, that really bothers me. That bad attitude and that pessimistic spirit will only cause you to do the same. There's no room for doubt, especially if you're believing God to bring that vision to fruition. Now, this is not a license for you to be mean. It is, however, a license for you to assess who's in your circle and make the necessary adjustments. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Netflix continues to ignore the outcry about 13 Reasons Why. The American Family Association, along with Parents Television Council and several other pro-family groups, have reached out to the streaming service urging the cancellation of their program. Netflix has not even responded to our letter. Instead, they released an even more vile Season 2 and are producing Season 3. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings says their program is engaging and that it fosters discussion of taboo topics like suicide and sexual assault. But at what cost? 14-year-old Anna Bright and several other teens have committed suicide after watching the show. Hastings calls our objections propaganda. Does he feel the profitability of his company is worth more than the lives damaged or lost because of his show? Please sign our petition to Netflix, learn more, and share our action alert when you visit afa.net. And pray Reed Hastings will recognize the dangers of 13 Reasons Why.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. Here's what we learned from the recent special election in Ohio's 12th congressional district. Things are really, really close, but they're tight lots of places. Over the past year and a half, Democrats have repeatedly transformed special elections in what are otherwise safe GOP districts into dogfights. But save for a special election by Democratic Pennsylvania Representative Connor Lamb, Democrats repeatedly fail to win on Republican turf. Democrats may be putting seats in play, but they've yet to emerge from these fights with many victories. Moral wins don't help. Democrats need to steal seats in districts which Republicans historically own. In Ohio, Democrats did well in suburban parts of that district. That's key, but frankly, they need to do a little better in order to take seats like these. In addition, Democrats ran strong in rural parts of the district, but it still wasn't enough. Democrats won't beat Republicans in rural America. The question is just how much Democrats can suppress the GOP vote there and offset that inherent advantage. This is something Democrats need in districts across the board this fall if there's to be any chance of a blue wave. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The president called you out for shadow banning. What is the truth around that idea?
So I think a lot of the statements behind the statement, the question behind the question is, look, shadow banning is a very widely defined term. There's not one single definition. So the definition that we found that seems to resonate with the most people is, not amplifying particular messages, or if someone puts out a tweet, hiding that tweet from everyone without that person who tweeted it knowing about it. So, but the real question behind the question is, are we doing something according to political ideology or viewpoints? And we are not, period. We do not look at content with regards to political viewpoint or ideology. We look at behavior. And we use that behavior as a signal to add to relevance. We need to constantly show that we are not adding our own bias, which I fully admit is more left-leaning. And I think it's important to articulate our bias and to share it with people so that people understand us. But we need to remove all bias from how we act and our policies and our enforcement.
People have these assumptions that you're out to get them or something.
And which is why transparency matters so much.
Yeah.
Which is why being open about our own personal views and what we think about what's happening is important. And I'll fully admit that I haven't done enough of that. I haven't done enough of articulating my own personal objectives with this service and my own personal objectives in the world. And I think people see a faceless corporation that they don't assume that humans are in it, or that they're genuine or authentic. They just assume based on what the output is. And that's on us. It's on me.
Oh, wow. So that was Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. He just sounds so reasonable, doesn't he? And so I have a friend who's an activist and, I mean, all around expert on a ton of different things, Ali Akbar, who is actually in close communication with Jack Dorsey. Like, they text each other. And Ali is a black conservative, and he's a political consultant. And I don't know how they got connected up, but they have been communicating about the treatment of conservatives on Twitter. And so I thought, when I realized the two of them were in communication, I thought, well, Ali will let him know we're just real people who differ from Jack Dorsey and many of his employees politically, but we're just real people, and we deserve an opportunity to give our views a fair hearing on Twitter. If it's a public service and it's driven by ad revenue, and believe me, conservatives spend quite a pretty penny on ads on Twitter. I know I have. So it's you know, you would think that things are getting better, but instead there's this connection between the two of them, and things are continuing to stay the same or even get worse, with people getting suspended and people getting their accounts taken down for nothing other than tweeting out the truth about genocides around the world, things like that. It's that sensitive. The algorithm. Yeah, I roll my eyes a little bit. I did. I'm not going to hide it from you. I don't believe it. Sorry, I don't. So now I want to give you how good was Mattie Duppler in breaking down the economic prospects? And regardless of political affiliation, a booming economy, a robust economic outlook is great for Americans. So whether you're here and you're, you know, a part of the gig economy, or if you're in the traditional economy where you're employed by someone else and, you know, you're getting your benefits through them, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone who has a number of side businesses going while you're at home homeschooling kids, no matter what your circumstances are, a booming economy with lots of Americans who have disposable income is a good thing for you. And I don't see how the Democrats can run on repealing the tax cuts when everything seems to be tied into those tax cuts being good for Americans. And if you're the kind of person who you feel that because someone is wealthy, that they don't deserve what they have, don't even think about the money. Just go straight to your Bible. There's scriptures in there that cover that. We are not to covet what our neighbor or other fellow citizen has earned. And that's just it, period. That's the end of that. That's not the way we are to comport ourselves. So I want to give you a little bit of information from MarketWatch. It's marketwatch.com. They did a recent study of 401k plan investors with more than $1 million in assets. And what they found would surprise you, that starting early enough and saving often enough would mean that you don't have to make millions to save millions, and you don't have to make a tremendous sacrifice. So according to Fidelity Investments, which is one of the nation's largest 401k trustees, I don't have accounts with them. They don't pay me. Just telling you what's on MarketWatch. It says that out of the 1,100 employees making under $150,000 that accumulated more than $1 million in their Fidelity 401k plan, in studying the transaction history of these accounts from 2000 to 2012, they found some things were similar. So this is not all average data that represents the median value of half more and half less, but here's what they found. The average 401k millionaire is 59 years old and has worked 34 years for their current employer. They began saving early and let the power of compounded tax-deferred growth work on their behalf. During the 12 years under study, the average 401k millionaire deferred 14% of their pay, or about $13,300 annually, indicating that the average salary was less than $100,000 during these years. And so mentally extrapolate that down or up based on your situation. You don't have to be a 401k millionaire, but you could definitely be a 3/4 of a millionaire if you're not making, nearly as much as $100,000. This isn't about a set number being the only goal. It's about you having a number that works for you personally and then striving towards that. You don't have to make $100,000 to do this, but they're talking about the 1,100 different individuals that they studied. So salary deferrals were large enough to take advantage of the free money of the employer match. The average annual company contribution was about 5% for a total annual contribution of 19% of pay. Stated another way, 28% of the contributions to the average 401k millionaire's account came from his or her employer. That's almost a third. That's almost a third of the money in there is free. So that means they really only saved and invested to the $750 mark, and the other $250,000 Well, that's a quarter. It's more than that. It's more than that. 700,000. Yeah. 3, 6, 9. Yeah. 333,000 or so came from the employer. The average 401k millionaire had 75% of their assets invested in equities. Their portfolios yielded an average annualized return of 4.8% during the 12 years studied. After adding employer contributions, the average account balance grew by 8.5% annually. So you may not need to accumulate $1 million in your 401k to achieve your retirement goals. But they want you to fund your 401k to the maximum extent possible. And the adage of saving 10% of income is obsolete, and it's a relic of prior time when corporations provided defined benefit pensions. For most employees today, the 401k will make up the bulk of their retirement portfolio. In a 30 to 40-year working career, a 15% salary deferral and a 3% match, if properly managed and allocated, should create an account balance. Now, I want to add something here from the Christian worldview perspective, which is this is the world's view of what you're supposed to do so that you can retire, around the age of 65. I believe, based on what I've read in the Bible, and I'm no scholar, but I definitely have read my Bible, that God doesn't intend for us to leave the ministry field when we turn 65 and live another 30 years on a beach somewhere or taking vacations. As much as I like to go to the beach, y'all know I do. If we were to say we're saving this amount of money so that as we get older and we can't work as much, we can still continue to have a comfortable lifestyle, that is a much more realistic, output. In other words, when is it that you would be absolutely unable to work due to your age and infirmity? You want to have a nice amount of money set aside for that. And you may be changing, as we've discussed on previous shows, from your primary career that you earn the bulk of your money and have the highest income. You'd be transferring from that and moving into the time of your life where you're not earning as much money. You don't have as many expenses because you don't have children in the home, but you're still working. It's just not to the same degree that you were before. And during those years, if you need savings to supplement your income, that would be preferable. Also, something to think about that I don't see here in this article, but I'm not going to read you the whole thing, is that if you own your own home by the time you reach that first retirement age of 65 and you keep working and so you don't have mortgage payments, you just have your annual property taxes, that lowers your expenses quite a bit. Also thinking through whether or not the home that you raised your kids in, if it's sizable, if that's going to be something you're going to want to continue to live in your 60s and 70s and 80s, that maintenance and upkeep and also heating and cooling expenses for a larger home when there are only two of you possibly and you need to have a smaller place. So, or you could get by with a smaller place. So it's a lot to think about, but God gives us a lot of resources. We have so much available to us in which to educate ourselves and make sure that we're on the right path or make corrections. And so, and as opposed to thinking of it as 65, that's when I stop working. And then you go and live to be 90 years old. Rather think of, as I approach my 60s, I want to know that I'm going to be doing this job. Maybe I'm going to keep doing this job. Maybe you're in programming or some in a career field where the thing for you is your mental acuity, and as long as you're sharp, you can keep doing that. Maybe you're a company owner. Most business owners keep working and owning their company until they absolutely just can't do it anymore, and then they retire, but they still have some kind of role on the board or something where they're contributing and at least attending meetings. But if you're not owning your own company, maybe you want to in your 60s. Maybe that's when you open up your bookstore or your coffee shop or whatever, and you want to have the savings from your 401k to do that. Whatever the case is, the idea that we're just going to completely stop working and sit around in nice, $500 Adirondack chairs from some fancy place down in, Naples, that is obsolete. And the Social Security Trust Fund will be completely empty in 2024, barring any other unforeseen circumstances to the negative. So we have to have a different view of things. And I think it's smart for them to say, you need to save more than 10% of your income. And if you're not to that place, you might want to look up Financial Peace University. It's a fantastic program for helping you to have a right view of your finances and make sure that you're tithing so that the Lord can bless the entirety of what you keep, but by giving to him first, by being obedient and giving him back that 10%, then you're in a position where you can do, you don't have as much debt because now you've carved out enough to save 10%. It's so much easier after that to keep biting off of that debt so that you have more of your disposable income that you control and you don't owe to someone that you borrowed from. Then you can start making some really great plans. And if you're not a millennial, which chances are if you're listening to this show, you're not. Hey to the millennials. You guys are awesome. But if you're not a millennial and you're listening to this show and you're thinking, well, I don't have, 34 years left in which to do this. It's never too late to start. Don't be discouraged by people who say, well, the thing is, if you're starting now, the market is high and you can't. Yes, you can still make money. And yes, you should still save and invest. You should start whenever you're able and do the best that you can and ask the Lord to bless it, because he will. That's what he's there for, is to help us, whether we start early or we start late. Start early, by all means. If you're younger and you're listening to this show, you need to be looking at how much money you can set aside and create that space so it's a habit for you. But I just find it fascinating that with all this good news economically, we only hear bad things. We're not hearing anything about this. This is the time when your income is up and you've got some kind of bonus from your employer. Sure, you might want to take a trip, but you also might want to fund that extra continuing education class so you can get a promotion. You might want to take that money and pour it into a ministry that you really care about. Or, in keeping with this whole, segment and Mattie Duppler's comments, you might want to put that money into your 401k, or at least some of it, and then look at the increase that you're getting from your employer and say, okay, this is an extra $300 a month. We're going to put 100 of that in where we can use it. And the other 200, we're not ever going to see it because it's going to go straight to the 401k until we get to that match amount. It's a good thing to do. And it sounds so difficult when you're in that coupon cutting phase. Been there, done that. I've cut my fair share of coupons, but it gets easier. As you get older, as you earn more, as you're better at managing your money, it gets easier for you. And if you're already there where you're past all of that, it's even, this is the gravy time where you get to move things around like pieces on a board to arrange them in a way that is most beneficial to you. And so commit all of it to God in prayer and make sure that you know that it is God's will for us that we live life abundantly, but he is a rewarder of obedience. So the tithing, the wise counsel, the saving, being wise with our spending, not being debtors, all those things play a role here. And there's no one who's too far gone that can't come back. The amazing stories that I've heard and seen on different websites and even people I know who've made fantastic turnarounds with their finances are proof that this can happen for anyone. And I love the 401k millionaire deal where, if you live in a high cost of living area, that million might not go very far, but there's always a town like Tupelo that you can move to in your later years and open up a shop. And much cheaper houses, still fantastic people. The possibilities are endless. You're in America. You're an American, not an Americant. All right? We have hour 2 right after this. We're going to be talking about ESPN solving their kneeling protest problems, and then we're going to get back into the statistics of why so many young people are leaving the church and what we can do about it. Stay there.
It was a time when men rebuilt the ruins. With one hand they laid bricks, with the other they held a weapon. Nehemiah said, "Let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach." Our nation, after many years of decline, is in a state of moral destruction. The cry is going out.
Do you see the distress we're in?
Join us in the battle. To learn more about our mission, visit urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. Enough is enough. That's according to Pennsylvania's top law enforcement official, who says he hopes the state's Roman Catholic leaders will cease their denials and deflections about a grand jury report into sexual abuse of children by priests following a letter to the faithful from Pope Francis condemning the attacks and efforts to hide them. Attorney General Josh Shapiro says the letter the Pope sent Monday acknowledges the painful truth. The Pope's letter said church officials showed no care for the little ones. His words. Chelsea Clinton has not looked at real facts over the impact of abortion on this country. 60 million who have died so far. AFN's Charlie Butts reports.
The daughter of Bill and Hillary Clinton spoke at a Rise Up for Roe event held to oppose Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the U.S. Supreme Court. During the course of the speech, she referred to the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision that legalized abortion, permitting women to enter the workforce rather than raise children.
American women entering the labor force from 1970 to 2009 added $3.5 trillion to our economy.
Carol Tobias, president of National Right to Life Committee, responds.
What she didn't address was how the economy would be roaring if we had 60 million people from babies now up until 40, 50 years old that were actually contributing by buying and participating.
Easing labor shortages, helping to pay down the national debt, and pumping money into Social Security. But trivializing abortion through economics actually misses the point that it claims a human life.
The first thing I thought of when I read her comments was the debate that this country had over slavery. There were those who thought slavery should be allowed because it was an economic boon to this country.
Suggesting the economy of the agricultural South was far more important than the moral issue of a human owning a human to provide free, enforced labor. I'm Charlie Butts.
The Trump administration is set to roll back the centerpiece of President Obama's efforts to slow what Obama and others call man-made global warming. The Trump administration is expected to propose regulations that give states broad authority to determine how to restrict greenhouse gas emissions from coal-fired power plants. The plan would let states relax pollution rules for power plants that need upgrades. That would reverse an Obama-era push to shift away from coal and toward less polluting energy sources. The weather in Seattle is making it hard to enjoy everyday activities. Forecasters are warning that the air is unhealthy due to the wildfires on the West Coast. One local resident shares how staying healthy in the region is tough. She describes how the air impacts her.
I feel like a burning sensation in my throat, and my chest is I feel wheezy.
The smoky skies and air quality is expected to get worse for the area in the following days. A 7-year-old New York boy is selling lemonade again after a state health inspector put the squeeze on him last month. Brendan Mulvaney raised more than $900 this weekend for the family of a 12-year-old girl who's facing surgery this week to fix a bow leg deformity from a rare bone disease. The inspector had to shut down Brendan's stand in Ballston Spa because he didn't have a permit to sell 75-cent lemonade. State officials say vendors from a nearby county fair had complained. In final news this hour, ads are coming to Netflix. Fox's Brett Larson explains.
The idea is pretty simple. Netflix is placing ads for its original content in between episodes. They say the ads are recommendations for other Netflix shows. But Netflix users have overrun social media to complain about the move, with some going so far as saying they'll cancel their subscriptions if it continues. Netflix confirmed to Business Insider that they're testing the feature and that when they introduced video previews when browsing for shows to watch, they saw it, quote, significantly cut the time members spent browsing and help them find something they would enjoy watching even faster. Nonetheless, binge watchers aren't buying into the plan, even if the ads are skippable and just promotions for other possibly interesting original content. Brett Larson, Fox News.
That's it for this hour. Between now and the next newscast, visit onenewsnow.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left. Just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
What is broken about Twitter? I mean, I think it really depends on who you follow. There's a lot of emphasis today on politics Twitter. And politics Twitter tends to be pretty divisive, and it tends to be pretty contentious, and you see a lot of unhealthy debate that you probably want to walk away from.
You don't need to hear him saying the N-word to know he's racist. This is the man who's attacking the NFL constantly. This is a man who stands on black people's necks so that he can appear taller to white people. White nationalism and white entitlement were at the basis of his campaign. We don't need any more evidence. The jury is in.
Primarily, our youth programs aren't designed to facilitate deep, meaningful, lasting young adult relationships. So these young people sort of know about the Bible, they esteem the Bible, but they don't necessarily believe that the Bible has claim on their lives.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Woo! I love those clips at the beginning of the show. All right, welcome back. StacyOnTheRight.com's website. You can get on there and have some fun. Join our ever-growing list of subscribers. We're so glad that people decide to hand us their email address so we can send them an occasional email. By the way, the list is never sold or bartered away. It's never shared. I'm the only person who has access to it. And the good news about that is that means it's just an email list that you can receive an email from me that has links to the website. It's got nothing more to it. So there's no tracking. There's nothing untoward. It's very simple, actually. So the simplicity of it, because I don't know any of that other stuff, which is great for people who decide to subscribe. So head over and do that if you feel so inclined. Right now, I want to get back into the discussion. Well, first off, let's go ahead and handle this ESPN thing. And I was really surprised to see them catching on so late, but I guess the pain of losing so many of their paid subscribers to their political agenda has finally hit its nadir. It's just like they can't handle it anymore. So the story is over at Hot Air. And you know what's funny about this? They just they could have done this like a few years ago. So they've been switching off hosts and trying to create a tweak of the mix of the discussion that they have, but they want to keep politics in it. And Americans don't tune into ESPN for politics. They tune in for sports. They're trying to get away from politics. They're trying to get away from work. They're trying to get away from local and national news. That is why ESPN exists, for sports. So they've lost their way, obviously. And their severely atrophied ratings have resulted in the layoffs of significant numbers of their staff and even some TV hosts, like some of their on-air talent. Now, social media has been replete. I've seen this for at least 3 years running, where people have been on there tweeting at ESPN, stop covering politics and just do sports. And so they've tried mixing it up and having a variety of sports that they cover, but still covering politics, and people are still not hearing it. So now that they have seen that year after year, the ratings are down and the subscribers are down and their efforts are not working, they finally decided that they're going to make a change to how they cover the NFL games. What they're going to do is they're going to wait to start broadcasting the game until after the national anthem is played. So if players protest the anthem, viewers are not going to know about it. They will not broadcast it before Monday night's NFL games this season. We generally have not broadcasted the anthem, and I don't think that will change this year. Our plan going into this year is not to broadcast the anthem. And this is president of ESPN, Jimmy Pitaro. He announced this on Friday. Again, that could change. It's unpredictable what could happen in the world, but as of now, we're not. We have communicated that back to the NFL. They have not asked, but as a courtesy and good partners, we have let them know what our plans are. Now, this is important because it's a reflection of the reality of the situation, which is that ESPN could literally politicize their content to the degree that they cease to be a viable cable channel, that they just go out of business. And now that they realize that things aren't changing in their favor, they're going to have to change. They're making a change. Is it too little, too late? Only time will tell. So let's now get back to in hour one. If you're just tuning into the show, thanks for being here. StacyOnTheRight.com. during hour one, we were talking about the Marriage and Family Conference held in Tupelo over the weekend. And I was there for day one. And it was an amazing opportunity to spend time with people that, you know, it's the people that you do life with, the people you're in Bible study with, the people that your kids, you know, their kids and your kids go to school together, or you're in, you know, whatever your interaction, they're your coworkers, and you get to do life with them. And I like living here in the suburbs of St. Louis, and I'm not forecasting any moves to Tupelo, but if I could have a crew of people that I would want to raise my kids around and to spend time with in my off hours, it would be the other Urban Family Talk hosts and American Family hosts. It would. I have not been with them and not enjoyed myself and not been really kind of, they're an awe-inspiring group. And so that would be what I would, but my kids are big now. I have the two that are in high school now, so that all is behind me, basically, almost. But it's nice to see them. Their children are younger, so they're all doing life together down in Tupelo, and it's pretty fantastic. If I do say so myself, they got a good thing going. I better not hear anybody complaining. I'm kidding. I never heard them complain. So when we were talking about the Marriage and Family Conference and how wonderful it was, one of the overarching themes of the conference, because it's about marriage and family, is that the millennials have been, up until just like literally the last Barna Group study update, the most unchurched generation, with around 7% of them claiming to be atheists. And then you have this next group, which is Generation Z, aged 4 to 18, and they actually claim atheism at a rate of 14%, which is unheard of in this country. So why are they leaving the church? And most of the conversations up until this most recent Barna Group study have been hinging around the idea that they leave church in college. They leave the faith, or they're, you know, not as interested in church or religion in college. But the truth is, what we're finding out is they're 12 years old. They're not getting their scientific questions answered, the things they're learning in their textbook at school. They go to church on Sunday and they ask questions their parents can't answer it, their youth group teacher can't answer. And so what happens is they stop believing. So they're sitting there with their parents, but they can't wait until they get to college so they can stop going to church and believing in all this stuff that's not real. That's a pretty frightening thing. If you're a Christian mom or dad and you're listening to that, you have got to be getting chills and really like feeling like you're going to go into a flop sweat, because that's pretty scary, that your kid would basically be thinking, this is something my parents believe. And they go to church with you, but they're not into it. So what do we do about that? Here are some statistics. First of all, it's David Kinnaman. He's the president of the Barna Group. He's the author of a couple of different books on this subject. And he is the successor to Mr. Barna, who actually was the founder of the Barna Group. And he's brilliant. And so he's explaining the statistics and giving us some more insight into this. It's number 4.
Yeah, well, you know, we did a lot of research for this book. That's what we do at Barna Group, is try to understand, you know, people's faith affiliations and kind of how they're thinking about the world, and sort of their faith journeys, you know, how they transition from teen to young adult, from young adult into, you know, established adult. And so we interviewed about 5,000 people for this project, and we found that 59% of young adults 18 to 29 who had grown up in some sort of Christian background dropped out at some point. So 59%, that's 6 out of every 10 young people that attend church. Not all of them are going to lose their faith per se. Many of them are just going to wander. They're going to, you know, disconnect from institutional forms of church for a period of time. But it was interesting. I was in Pittsburgh, as I said, last week, and there was about 2,000-3,000 college students that I was speaking to, and most of them fairly committed Christians, a conference called Jubilee. And I asked them, you know, just show of hands, how many of you know somebody who you went to church with, or who has wandered away from faith or Christianity as they've grown up? And I mean, it seemed like every hand in the whole room went up. So when you talk about millions, here's a sample of 3,000 Christian students. You know, all of them know somebody who has wandered away, who've left their faith, who've been disconnected in some way. It's a huge issue, and we need to be able to have some handles on why that's happening.
So we do need to know why it's happening, and we need to understand that, because God has tasked us as parents to raise children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And so when your child leaves home and they're no longer a Christian, it's a feeling of failure on the part of the parents, and they want to do something about it. And obviously, you know, it's prayer, fasting, you know, getting together with a group of moms and praying for these kids. That's something we should be doing anyway. but especially if we're seeing a child who's kind of, maybe prodigal, or maybe they're still religious, they still believe in God, but they're not actually going to church. That's something that we need to be actively involved in helping our young adult children cope with. And so it's not that children leave the house and we disconnect. And I know that's not the case. Most people are still very heavily involved in their children's lives, whether they're in college or off working or what have you. But it's not the end. It's not a death sentence. If your child is in this situation, you don't have to feel hopeless. There's a way back. And so then he talks a little bit more about why they're leaving the church, because they asked them. This is what I love about the Barna Group. They actually went through and asked these young adults, why? Why do you feel this way? And they had some interesting answers.
Part of the big project goal was to figure out some of those questions. And, in some ways we've spent the last 4 years doing it. And I feel like we've got some really good information. And in some ways, I feel like we're just scratching the surface as to understanding this, because it's such a deep and complicated problem. But when we interviewed people who had dropped out, we found that there were a lot of different things that they were sort of complaints or issues or challenges that they had had. We talk about the fact that they feel the church is overprotective. So in relation to culture, they feel like they've got to choose between being a Christian and watching, R-rated films or engaging in culture, and then the church being overprotective. They feel the church is shallow, that their experience of God is missing from church. They feel the church is anti-science. They say the church is doubtless, that there's not a safe place for them to admit their most pressing life questions. They say that the church is exclusive, that they don't understand that sometimes the exclusive message of Christ, that he's the way, the truth, and the life, they have to choose between their faith and their friends. And they say that the church is repressive sexually, like that it's traditionalist, and that it keeps them from living lives sexually as well as they should. Or that it's out of step with the sexual mores of our time. So it's a broad range of issues.
Woo! So that's some tough love right there. First of all, that they can't express doubt. So anytime someone is experiencing doubt, obviously that's an attack of the enemy. But our response can't be that we just come in with a biblical platitude. Oh, that's an attack of the enemy. Push that feeling out. Take every thought captive. Yes, we are to take every thought captive, but how about examining the doubt itself? How about saying, well, what are your doubts? Like, what is it that you're struggling with? Can we talk about that? And then instead of trying to cut them off and just give them every Bible verse you've ever memorized, just sit and listen to what the person is saying. Even if it's your child or your spouse and you're afraid, you feel that fear creeping in, like, oh my goodness, backsliding, alert, alert. Zip it. Sit down. Calm down, listen, hear what they're saying to you, and then find some fact-based information that you can come back with. Someone who's rooted and grounded in biblical truth, who's also writing books that address this particular type of doubt. One thing we're not taking advantage of, and as Christians in this modern era, is the amount of information out there that supports the Bible, that supports the things that we know to be true. And if we believe it and we have faith surrounding it and we're rock solid, it doesn't mean that we can't learn more in order to help someone who's not rock solid, who's having doubts, to shore those up so that they can stay with the faith. God wouldn't have us practicing a faith, being disciples of a Lord that couldn't be quantified, that we just can't explain. That's not his way. He's orderly. He has all of these things out there for us to learn, but we gotta seek it out. We have to be willing to search for that information. And if we are, we're going to find a wealth of knowledge, and there's so much beauty in the intelligence of the design that has been laid out for us by God. It is just awesome. So I'll give you a few of those resources when we get back. I'm going to grab a couple of those books off my shelf and share them with you. Don't get mad if you see me holding up books. We're not going to be actually reading from them. We're just going to talk about them. And also when we get back, we're going to listen to Toure say that the entirety of American white, the whole country is white supremacist. Just the whole country, everybody, it's white supremacy everywhere you look. That's Toure. We'll be right back with more.
Hi, I'm Will Addison, and we are partnering with the Ministry of Preborn to save babies' lives through ultrasound. Here's how a nurse describes the power of an ultrasound.
Last week, just one example of a mom who came in was very abortion-minded, and when she saw the picture of her baby on ultrasound and heard that beating heart, it was a defining moment that just broke her, and she said, I just can't allow this baby to be killed.
By letting a mother hear her baby's heartbeat and see her baby in the womb, she will choose life 80% of the time.
I cannot tell you how many times a baby's life is saved through ultrasound. It's just an incredible tool.
Underwrite a free ultrasound and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
What started out as a slogan and bumper sticker has essentially become a platform of one political party. I'm talking about the call to abolish ICE. ICE stands for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. In some respects, the call to abolish ICE is not new. 15 years ago, you can find some activists calling for the dismantling of ICE because they perceived that the agency violated civil rights. But the call to abolish ICE has new energy because some Democrats are trying to move the party further to the left. By the way, we aren't just talking about self-described socialists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Many Democrats who will be running for the presidency in 2 years also call for the abolishing of ICE. That is why it's likely that this idea will make its way into the Democratic platform. Republican candidates around the country have seized on this political slogan in order to paint their Democratic opponents as extreme. It is likely that the abolish ICE slogan may indeed hurt some of the candidates in the midterm elections, especially when some in the Democratic Party compare immigration officials to the Nazi secret police. But Republicans might also want to be prepared to answer some important questions. If you think the idea of abolishing ICE is such a bad idea, why have so many Republican candidates called for the abolition of the IRS as well as the abolition of the Departments of Energy, Education, and Commerce? I think there are good answers to such questions, but they better be prepared if they want to ridicule the idea of abolishing ICE. Democrats in the House and Senate are preparing how they would go about abolishing ICE once they flip the House and Senate to Democratic control. Of course, this presupposes that Democrats take both the House and the Senate, but first we'll have to see if the slogan helps them take control of Congress. It's possible the slogan may cause them to lose elections. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. So this is one of the fantastic things about living in a house where I have a bunch of readers, and that is that they're readers, and it's fantastic. The bad thing is I can't leave a book anywhere without some kid moving it, and then I can't find it. So the book that I want to show you, there's two of them that we bought when Dr. Hugh Ross came to town. He was in town. He visited our church. In fact, he's going to be back here for a conference in September at our church, all about science and creationism and just so much fantasticness. Well, I left two Hugh Ross books over on the bookshelf over there, and now they're gone, which means that some Washington kid has those books in their bedroom and they're reading them. This happens around here. But lucky for me, the internet is real. And so I can tell you, Hugh Ross is one of the preeminent experts on science and Christianity. He's a Canadian Christian apologist, an old earth creationist. He obtained his PhD in astrophysics from the University of Toronto. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in physics from the University of British Columbia. And he has Reasons to Believe. And Reasons to Believe is actually a discussion group that has chapters all over the United States that you can join in your local area and learn about these difficult topics from experts. And then you can also read his books, The Creator and the Cosmos, Beyond the Cosmos, Creation and Time, Hidden Treasures in the Book of Job, Who Was Adam, Creation as Science, The Fingerprint of God, A Matter of Days, More Than a Theory, The Genesis Question. Honestly, he wrote all these books. I'm going on. Why the Universe is the Way That It Is, The Creator and the Cosmos, Fingerprint of God, Paternity, Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men, The Origins of Life, and An Improbable Planet. And so that's an impressive list of books. And so why am I pointing you to books? Well, for our kids who they're able to, any question they want answered, they need only type it into Google and all of these answers come up. And then if they want to see someone talk to them about it, they can click video, and YouTube videos will drop down that they can choose from. Someone who's their own age, someone who's older, someone who's an academic, someone who's self-taught. And so they're used to anything that a person in their life can't answer, they can get the answer online. And so they don't understand this dichotomy where adults in their life will say, you know, God is real and we can see the evidence of him everywhere. And they say, why? What is it? And then you say, just have faith and believe. We have to be able to quantify it. And so I'm not saying that Hugh Ross is the only person that you can consult with, but I like to give a resource when I'm talking about a topic and saying the answers are out there. And I just so happen to have heard him speak in person on 2 occasions at our church. And after he gives a talk at church, he does Q&A afterwards. So at our church, we have 3 services every weekend, and he'll do the Q&A at the 6 p.m. service on Saturday, the 9 a.m. on Sunday, and then the 11 a.m. So by the 11 a.m., you would think, he's probably pretty tired. Nope, not at all. And when he does the Q&A, some people actually stand up, and they look so sweet with their little church clothes on, or they're like millennials, so they're dressed casual, but they're still chic. And then they'll ask him a question. Sometimes I'm sitting there like, are these students in astrophysics? Like, what did he just ask? And Hugh Ross will say, that's an interesting question. Are you referring to blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah? And then they'll clarify, and then he'll say, well, first of all, for those of you who are not aware of what such and so is, and then he'll explain what it is in lay terms for all of us regular people, and then he'll answer their question. This man is a preeminent expert, and it has been my privilege as just, you know, a regular chick who goes to church to be able to, you know, just look at my bulletin. Oh, next week, Hugh Ross is going to be here talking again. So it has been a real pleasure to have that opportunity. And so I just encourage you, first of all, you can go to his website and find out when he's speaking. He speaks at churches. So you can invite him to speak at your church. But if none of that works for you, you can just buy the books. The book that matches up with the topic that your child has questions on, or that you might have questions on, and equipping ourselves, then we are able to better defend the faith. And that is being truly a disciple of God, of Jesus Christ, a disciple of Jesus Christ who is rightly dividing the word and able to give an answer whenever someone asks why we believe what we believe. Now I want to pivot over to, and we're going to talk about this more, you know, the young people leaving the church and what we can do about it. Part of this program that is really important to me is what we do as parents and how we can encourage each other and support each other as parents, and you know, having husbands, having wives, you know, supporting our spouses, having that biblical worldview. We'll be back with this topic again. And my hope is, I'll just go ahead and share, my hope is that we may be able to have someone from the Barna Group on the program to answer some of our questions about this study. And that would be a real privilege. So we'll work on that as well. Oh, and I forgot to mention in hour 1, Spread the News, Wednesday, Ann Coulter. That's right, Ann Coulter. Yes, she has a new book coming out, and she's going to come on our program and talk to us about her new book. And then I'm going to talk to her about some she's written so many things. I don't know how I'm going to get it all in, but I have some amazing questions for her, and I know she's going to be just stellar. Because I met her once way back in 2012, I have to tell you, and she's just as tall and just as thin as she looks on TV. It's just pretty amazing. So anyway, she's going to be on the show on Wednesday. So let's pivot now and listen to, really, this is just a bunch of nonsense, but you have to be aware of what they're saying in order to be able to rebut that. And there's a simple answer to Touré's problem here about basically believing that the entirety of America is a white supremacist country.
Part of what I hear is part of why black people are not dealing with the GOP at this point He's talking about that we are obsessed with race, right? And he has this colorblind approach that everybody will rise. And we know that's not the case, right? This is a white supremacist country, and we have to deal with that every day in everything, in how we relate to the police and how we relate to jobs and how we relate to the criminal justice system, in everything. And when you talk about we are obsessed with race, what we hear is, I don't want to deal with race. I want to not talk about it. You should not talk about it.
Yeah, that's the sound of me sipping a little bit of water while I just, the inanity there was just too much for me to handle. Too much for me. This is incredible. I can't get over how often this man tries to condemn every single American for the sins of a very small group of Americans who happen to be racist. And the way he tries to paint the entirety of our police force in this country, 1 million officers in local police departments across this country with 1 billion interactions a year with Americans, and he tries to paint them as racist, every last one of them. How could they all be racist? With 1 million of them, wouldn't there just be carnage everywhere? I mean, it would just be a bloodbath if all police officers were rabidly anti-black and anti-women and anti-everything else. Just would be. It's so improbable. It defies explanation. So, all right, let's go to the phones. We have Keith in Michigan. Thanks for calling the show.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say, as soon as you switch over to my phone, your voice gets really quiet, so I'm sorry if I can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Right away.
I'll try to speak up.
Okay. So, yeah, a couple of things. There's a lot of the people that I'm thinking about on the liberal side of things is that sometimes, if their brain was dynamite, they wouldn't have enough to blow their nose. But my thinking about the science side of things, I'm very scientific. I was going to college to get a physics. I was getting a degree in physics, eventually got it in mathematics. Very logical in thinking, very scientific in mind. And it's because of that science, because of that background of math and biology and everything, solidified my understanding and belief into God. There's a book that I read when I was a kid from Josh McDowell. It's called Questions That Skeptics Answer. And he had a couple of really short books, and one of them had to deal with there is this isotope that has a half-life of less than a half a second. That means it's here and gone. In less than a second, it's here and gone. And yet they were able to find these isotopes frozen, mind you, frozen in solid rock. How could that be? If rock takes hours, days, and weeks for a lava to solidify into a rock, so how could a rock be created and solidify and become solid in less than a second? Unless, of course, it was created out of nothing. It's just little things like that and little experiments that have come up with, and it's like there is no other explanation other than a creator. You look at the cell of a body. I looked at of a human being's body, the cell. I looked at all the chemistry and everything that happens. It is very confusing. It's very, excuse me, very complicated. And there's the law of entropy, meaning that everything goes down to the lowest level, lowest energy level. Things are not naturally built up. Things are built down. That is the law of entropy.
Wow.
And if something is built out of a piece of goo, there's no way that it can build up into something that's very complicated. And it's like science just proves that there is a God.
And so when I hear you talking about this and you're so calm and reasonable, you don't sound like a kook or somebody who does, I practice science, but it's a special kind of science. And over again, we've heard people with scientific backgrounds, with mathematical backgrounds, talk about the proofs that exist within creation that point to an intelligent designer, i.e. a creator. But we don't take that information as Christians, and we don't blast it out of the pulpit, and we don't teach it to our kids because the public schools aren't going to teach it to the kids. So is it easy to understand? I mean, the way you just explained it sounded pretty easy for me to understand. Can we explain this to our kids to prevent them from believing that Christianity can't be proven by science? We might not have him anymore. Listen,
No, I'm here. I'm
okay.
sorry. I could barely hear what your question was. What was that again?
So the question is, can we teach what you just shared with me, the information from the book, can we teach that to our kids so they don't have to feel like I got to leave Christianity because it's not provable by science?
Well, the thing about it is, though, every child learns differently. And that's the thing that we do, is that we homeschool our kids. And every child, I've learned that there are like 600 different types of curriculums out there just to teach children a way to learn. And every child is different. Some are very logical, like me. I'm very logical. I'm theoretically science-founded, geeky person. And so to me, on a very scientific basis, I go, oh, yeah, okay, I understand. There are some kids that are just completely artistic, and it takes all to be what do you call it, just a productive member of the Christian body. It takes all types of kinds. So everybody learns differently. So some people have to learn by an artistic way, a very free-thinking way, and the other people think about on a scientific way. So everybody learns differently.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for calling in today and for adding your expertise and knowledge to this conversation. I really appreciate talking to you, Keith. I got to say, when I'm listening to him talk about that makes total sense to me. And there's a way for us to go about doing this, to having these conversations, especially with our kids, so they can know that this isn't some mumbo jumbo that we're just reading from this phantasmagorical book that's full of these weird tales and it just can't all be true and we just believe it because we're old. That's not what we need to be teaching our kids. Also, we're not old, okay? I'm just saying. So what I want to do is I want to get a list of these resources together and have that someplace at StacyOnTheRight.com so we can have a place to go to find the resources and also to point others to so they can use the buffet of information that's out there to shore up what their kids believe. In fact, the Truth Project, I just realized I took that Bible study with a bunch of my, some I knew, but mostly a bunch of women that I didn't know. It was a wonderful Bible study. That is a Bible study. I need to get that book. Now, I'm pretty sure I know where that book is. It's over there on the bookshelf in the corner. I believe it's still there unless a kid has moved it. But I will find the other Hugh Ross books so I can show you the couple of them that we bought at our church when he came to speak. And to make sure that you have I can give you some of the information from the books and they were great, fantastic. So we'll share that. I just have to locate the books, obviously. They're here somewhere. And then when we get back, we're going to be talking about the Blame America First Democrats and this astronomical number of babies who were born alive after botched abortions in Canada. And then these Canadians just left the babies to die. I mean, this is just unbelievable. This is where liberals think we should be with abortion. And then, of course, we'll take your calls. We're at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. And a shout out to the people that I met this weekend at the conference. It was so cool meeting people that have called into the show or have been in the Churban or one of the chat rooms on one of the streams that we have. And then to meet them in person, it was just great. It was awesome. It was really my pleasure to do that. So we will have more on that and other great things when we get back from the break. StacyOnTheRight.com is a website. UrbanFamilyTalk.com. You can also go to AFR.net. That's a good place for you to be. And We'll be back with more right after this.
Here's what you missed on Airing the Addisons.
I remember talking to a Muslim friend of mine many, many years ago in college, and he was from Lebanon. But I remember being surprised as he was talking about the Christian that lived next door to his family. The Christian. Now, you have to reverse your brain here. You have to reverse your brain. Because he said, yeah, there's a Christian woman that lives next door to us, you know, and she's very nice, you know. And he said, but she probably won't be Christian long because our family's working on her. Isn't that interesting? Like, isn't that something? And I remember being like, but she has the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like, she has the truth. But there was this thing of like, yeah, we're just like, you know, we're just living nicely next to her. And it was sort of like how Christians do. We're just being an example, and we believe we're going to win her, he said.
Airing the Addisons, 6 to 9 Central on Urban Family Talk.
We kind of take it too lightly.
Yeah.
When we talk about people's eternities.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Normative behavior is defined by reference.com as the standard of correctness that follows the rules of society. Who or what governs what is normal in society and how we treat each other. News stories show a fraying in what is considered normal. Let's face it, our norms are under attack. We now regularly see elected officials call for violent protests, and the word resist has become a clarion call for uncivil behavior. It is not normal to harass people in public, period. It is not normal to incite violence against people that we disagree with. It's not normal to react to the truth with violence. Degrading our norms can only progress if we allow it. And make no mistake about it, each of us has a choice on whether or not to join the mob. Stand firm in refusing to allow the destruction of our norms by speaking the truth in love. If that is rebuffed, shake the dust from your feet. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Donald Trump's America.
The president returned Sunday to the White House from some time away in New Jersey. He faced a weekend of reaction via Twitter to his counsel, Don McGahn, speaking to special counsel Robert Mueller. The president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, on Fox's Sunday Morning Futures, said McGahn said nothing wrong about the president.
And we're confident because the man is a man of integrity, and he would have resigned if something like that had happened.
The president also dealing with some intelligence community criticism over revoking the security clearance of ex-CIA Director John Brennan, who said on NBC's Meet the Press that he will be the face of opposition to this White House.
If that's the price we're going to pay to prevent Donald Trump from doing this against other people, to me, it's a small price to pay.
Today, the president puts border security back on the front burner at the White House, leading a ceremony in the East Room honoring ICE and Border Patrol agents for their work. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
There's some things that are savagely wrong in this country.
There is something fundamentally immoral and wrong about a nation in which we have 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people.
There's a normalcy of injustice that we've accepted.
And from mass incarceration to money bail to policing, our criminal justice system has failed. Let's speak truth.
Let's just start with the hard truth about our criminal justice system. It's racist. I mean, front to back.
So I won the places that are optimistic, diverse, dynamic, moving forward. And his whole campaign, Make America Great Again, was looking backwards.
We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great.
Yeah, that was a Blame America First Democrats mashup. And what was so funny about that is that Cuomo, that last clip you heard, he actually had to walk that back. You know, he comes from an immigrant family. And it's not true that we're all immigrants. Like, all Americans are not immigrants. I know I'm not descended from immigrants on one side of my family. I'm descended from slaves, and you can hardly call slavery immigration. On the other side, yeah, I'm descended from immigrants. So, I mean, what does it matter? What matters is that people who are here want to be Americans, and that people who are here appreciate this country. Yeah, we have freedom of speech, but what kind of point are you making by saying that you want to run to be the president of the United States? Cuomo, he's considering a 2020 presidential run, and you don't think we've ever been great. Then why would you want to be the president of something that had never been great? You basically have disqualified yourself from consideration with your statement. Yeah, that's why he's walking it back. So that's the blame America first Democrats. Blame America for everything bad, never say anything good about this country, even though you're swanning around in private jets, living the high life, complaining because 3 people are richer than the rest of the 50 bottom percent. Okay. Even if you confiscate all their money, is that going to make the bottom 50% richer? Or is it behaviors? Is it choices that are being made? Look at Rahm Emanuel. Last week he said that the reason why we're not having any traction on reducing murders in Chicago is because there's a morality issue in that community. Well, he's not wrong. Now, he's not going to get any credit for it because he's a Democrat and they're not allowed to tell the truth about which communities or which groups of people have better behavior than others, because morality is about choices that are being made. You choose to be morally upright or you choose not to be morally upright. It's not something that it's out of your control. It is well within your control whether or not you operate as a moral individual. And this is a decision we all have to make, decisions, thousands of decisions on a daily basis as to whether or not we're going to be moral, to tell the truth, to work hard, to choose to work instead of watching TV or stealing or shooting people. Some of it is that simple. Others of it is really, yeah, everybody watches TV. Even those people who tell you they don't watch TV, they watch it. Come on. It's about how much TV do you watch and what are you watching when you're watching it? How is the TV that you're watching shaping what you believe about your surroundings or whatever the topic is on television? Or an even bigger question, are you watching TV when you could be doing something else to grow your mind and your knowledge base so that you could do something more with yourself, you could improve your situation? 2 people, one person watches television a lot, the other person reads lots of books and realizes they have an affinity for something and decides to, instead of reading books for free, to pay to go get an education somewhere. And 5 years later, one has a bachelor's degree and is now earning $60,000 a year, and the other one is still watching television. Is that a condemnation on watching TV? No. It's just a statement of fact that lots of people in the bottom 50% of this country have been people that have watched more television than have read books. Does that mean they're bad people? No. But it doesn't mean that the people who have read, the statistic is that people who own businesses read a minimum of 52 books a year. The other statistic is that the wealthier a person is, and this is statistics, not something I'm making up, that the wealthier a person is, the more likely they are to have an Audible account where they listen to books on CD on their commute to and from work, increasing the number of books that they can read because their target is a minimum of 4 books a month. Some people couple those things together. They're in investment clubs, book clubs, so that they're reading books and listening to them on Audible CD so they can increase and have even more knowledge flowing in. Some of them, the reading is not so much books, but it's newspapers because they're reading the investment sections of all of the major newspapers, and they're reading up prospectuses and things, background information on companies, doing research because they want their investments to be sound. Regardless of that, when Rahm Emanuel makes these statements about the morals of the people who are living in the parts of the city that are most plagued by crime, he's not wrong. The people there don't actually cooperate with the police to apprehend the people who are doing the shootings. With no repercussions, with no enforcement against shootings, the number of people who engage in shootings when they're just angry at someone, drive by their house and shoot in the direction of their home, shooting innocent bystanders, that number goes up. And every time someone gets away with it, it encourages other people to do the same thing. So whether or not a person is shooting people or not, if they know of someone who's committed a crime or if they have evidence that they've not turned in and shared with the police, that is an immoral act and they are participating in the increase in crime that's going on in their community. This is hard conversation because most people don't want to hear that. Everyone in the inner city is an innocent victim. No one's doing all the shootings. It's the police's fault. That's what you hear. But that can't be right. It can't be right that everyone in the inner city is innocent. It's also not accurate that everyone in the inner city is a criminal. There's a mix. Statistics show that it's about 20 to 22% of the people living in that community that are actually doing all of the crime. So if you cooperate with the police to get that 22% out of your midst, you're probably going to see a reduction in crime. I learned an interesting fact today. It's on another subject, but it's kind of instructive about the incidence of crime in major cities where there is an NRA convention. When the NRA convention comes to town, about 3 weeks before its arrival, the crime rate takes a dive. And there is less crime for the 3 weeks leading up to the convention and the entire week of the NRA convention. And then the crime returns to a normal rate after the NRA convention leaves town. So why do you think that is? Because a bunch of law-abiding, gun-owning people come into town, 87, 85,000, somewhere in that neighborhood every single year for the NRA convention. And you can track it. Every city that hosts it has a reduction in crime for about a month, and then it goes back up to its normal level. What is that telling you? That criminals understand cause and effect, and they know that law-abiding people who are trained to own firearms and carry them are going to be unwilling targets. They're much more likely to be shot or killed if they commit a crime during that time. So they don't. So that tells us that moral behavior and individuals who are seen as being expert at defending themselves and capable can have a positive impact on the crime rate, making the crime rate lower. So in inner city communities, when Rahm Emanuel says, well, we've got low morals in these areas, it's unfortunate that he's never taken the time to really expound on that and talk about it more, but his ideology has been much more important to him. And now people are starting to look at his results and say, he's a horrible mayor. And so he's therefore a horrible person for saying the truth, which is, if you don't want to cooperate with the police and the authorities to apprehend the criminals, then you're going to have high crime. But saying that's like, racist or something. It's not something that you should be allowed to say. I think it's ridiculous. I think you should absolutely not only be allowed to say it, but that you should be forced to deal with the consequences of, you've got fatherlessness, you've got kids running around who they cannot read and do math on grade level because the school system is below par and their parents aren't pouring into them. That's something else that was shared during the conference. And I know, like I've talked about so many books this episode, but this is the book that I'm presently working on, that I'm reading. And obviously, bucket list item for Stacey Washington is I want to interview Thomas Sowell. I mean, he's one of the people I admire most in this country for his prodigious brain. It is just amazing. Well, in this book, they talk a little bit about the number of words that are spoken to children. And so studies show that 30% of children entering the kindergarten year, their first year of formal education, that kids from affluent households have heard 30,000 words by the time they enter kindergarten. And kids from poverty-stricken households have heard about 5,000 words. So here's the quote from the book from Thomas Sowell. Children of parents with professional occupations have been found to hear 2,100 words per hour, while children from working-class families hear 1,200 words per hour. Children from families on welfare hear 600 words per hour. Other studies suggest that there are also qualitative differences in the manner of parent-child interactions in different social classes. In other words, some of these households are more moral than others. And how is speaking words to kids moral? It's the attention that's being paid to the kids. And we're not talking about just barking orders at kids. It's about time and care in the interaction. And so you might say, well, the parents are in the affluent households, there's a mom who stays home. Well, if you're in a poverty-stricken household and the mom is at home on welfare, receiving welfare for the kids, she's at home too. So there's an opportunity for her to speak words to the kids. Even without a stellar education, look at Ben Carson's mom. She couldn't even read. She would sit with a newspaper in her lap and just run her fingers across so her kids would see her reading because she wanted them to think she could read so they would want to read too. This isn't about having a certain knowledge base. It's about doing whatever it takes to increase the knowledge base of your kids so that they're not caught in that fourth grade, reading below grade level, doing math below grade level, so that the prison system is creating a bed for them somewhere in your state because they know they're going to be in prison. So I wish more individuals would be willing to listen to wise counsel, whether it comes from Rahm Emanuel when he finally gets something right, or when it comes from experts like Thomas Sowell and Star Parker and others who have spoken about this extensively, about the impact of, the amount of words that you speak to your kids, the teaching them their letters and their numbers while they're still in preschool, reading to them, spending time with them, focusing on them and their well-being, just parenting them. And it's not outside of what you can do. Just because someone is poor doesn't mean that they can't treat their children in a way that would improve their educational prospects. It's just not true that the only people who are able to do that are affluent women in the suburbs. It's just not true. So a couple of other news items, and I was really surprised by over the weekend. I just was like, I got back from the conference and I unplugged. I did not plug back in until today, and I felt amazing. But you know how it is when you travel, you get to a place where you're just exhausted from the travel. And there were no direct flights, and so I went through Dallas on the way back, and I was all weekend long. I have been bumping into people that I know, and I'm so disoriented from traveling and so exhausted that I don't even recognize the people. So I'm like looking at them, and they're like, Stacy. I'm like, oh, hello. I could think I gave all my energy on Friday. So let's talk about this definitive list of all the violent rhetoric. We just have a couple minutes left in the show. All the violent rhetoric, anti-Trump attacks, and harassment this year. And this is a full list. So Amber Athey of the Daily Caller, who's been on this program before, she's a fantastic media and breaking news editor, has this list. And I mean, it's just fantastic. And some of the stuff I can't read on the air here, but suffice it to say, and please don't get offended, we're all adults. I'm sharing with you what is the list of all this violent rhetoric and attacks that have been leveled against Donald Trump and people who may support him. And this is just to show you that there is no, when they go low, we go high. There is no high on the political left. CNN guest Rick Wilson, this is on January 12th, threatens to gut a Trump supporter like a fish. On March 15th, Capitol Police arrest Democratic operative for assaulting a female Interior Department communications official. April 28th, comedian Michelle Wolf jokes about Kellyanne Conway getting stuck under a tree. May 3rd, CNN's April Ryan jokes about getting into a street fight with Sarah Sanders, and she wonders why she doesn't get called on. May 8th, a woman charged with a felony reckless endangerment for trying to run Representative David Kustoff, Republican from Tennessee, and an aide off the road. I reported on that then too. 5/11, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace suggests that she would wring Sarah Sanders' neck. June 18th, Stephen Miller is called a fascist while eating at a Mexican restaurant, which is a little bit weird, the way he constantly eats at Mexican restaurants. Like, that's weird. June 20th, Kirsten Nielsen is driven out of a Mexican restaurant. 6/22, Red Hen restaurant owner refuses to serve Sarah Sanders. And by the way, I don't know if you guys saw this. A lot of people were laughing and chuckling because Michelle Wolf, her show on Netflix has been canceled. Apparently, she really was not funny at all. Anyway, people are saying her show was aborted. Oh, some people are savages. All right. That's the program. We'll be back with you tomorrow with more news and information. It's going to be a fantastic program. We'll have Brigitte Gabriel, president of actforamerica.org, on the program tomorrow. God bless and have a fantastic evening.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Always stay up to date with the latest in the culture war from the news team of One News Now. Use the One News